Everyone. How are you doing? Great. I see some people all the way in the distance. Are you there in the back? Wave. Yes, everybody wave. Very, very good. We're the last session of the evening, of the day. What a full, robust day we have had. And we are so glad that you would join us today and be here for our final session. We also have, of course, our online audience of experts, students, peers, journalists. Welcome to all of you. Please use the hashtag UN Data Forum, and please follow at UN Data Forum on all the platforms. We are very happy to have a very important conversation with you about trust and ethics in data. My name is Sri Srinivasan, and I am a longtime friend and fan of the United Nations. I had the honor of serving as the Chief Digital Officer of the City of New York, as well as the Metropolitan Museum of Art and Columbia University. And I worked very closely with statisticians, data scientists, analysts, and others on using data to tell better stories. So I thought, it's a long day already. To have some fun, I went into ChatGPT and I said, tell me a funny story about ethics and data. So instantly, the story came. Once upon a time, there was a data scientist who was tasked with analyzing customer behavior for a company. The data showed the customers were more likely to purchase a product if it was marked as limited edition. Excited by this discovery, the scientists proposed to the marketing team that they create a limited edition product to boost sales. However, the ethics team quickly intervened and pointed out that creating a false sense of scarcity would be seen as deceptive advertising. The data scientist was disappointed, but realized the importance of considering ethics when working with data. From that day on, they made sure to always consult with the ethics team before making any major decisions based on data. The moral of the story: data can provide valuable insights, but it's important to consider the ethical implications of how the data is used. And sometimes even the funniest data stories can have serious ethical implications. First of all, I don't know how funny the story is. Second, I think it was generated by the ethics team and not the data team, right? So we will accept this and move on. We have a rock star set of panelists here today. We are so excited, both here in person as well as online. And let me tell you who we have on our panel. We're going to be talking about how all the different aspects of data pertaining to transparency, openness, visibility of data, while examining the intersectionality between professional and ethical principles, as well as legal frameworks and institutional practices. I hope that's the only time you hear jargon from the stage. We're going to try to make it as simple for all of us to understand and communicate. We also want them each to give us case studies and practical examples of how you are striking the balance between trust through informed consent, accuracy, international standards, and timely data. So our guests are here. Please welcome Shaida Badi, who is co-founder and managing director of Open Data Watch. We also have Badawa Batmunk, who is chairman of the NSO of Mongolia. Also on stage with me is Yusuf Murangwa, who is Director General of the National Institute of Statistics of Rwanda. Online, we will be joined for a video statement by Madhub Dudesha, who is the Data Protection Commissioner of Mauritius. And we're also joined online by Natalia Karfi of the Open Data Charter, will be online with us. So it's a great panel. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for being here. And we are going to get right to it. I want to have each of you just give us kind of an opening thought for the audience. What are key action solutions that NSS managers and data stewards could take along the data value chain to build and maintain trust? So that's the general question. If you can also tell us a little bit about your own work as well as that question. So I was told, by the way, that I don't need to introduce Shaida because everybody knows her. Does everybody know Shaida? Who knows Shaida? Make some noise. There you go, a lot of people. All right, Shaida, over to you.
Thank you. Thanks, Sri. And it's lovely to be here talking about this amazing topic. Well, we come from an era where, as Winston Churchill said on trust, is that trustworthy data is the data that's accepted and used without question. But I think today we should question that. We should say this is really what the ecosystem that we are working on is very complex, and it really needs to be considering many of the elements of the trust that are interlinked. So my call to action for what NSS managers should do is, first of all, to take a look at their legitimacy, look at their mandate, review and renew it. Many of the countries that we talk to, and there have been some of them here during the past couple of days, they do not have the mandate of servicing data along the data value chain. They're very much focused on production, maybe annual reports on data, but not all the way going to data dissemination, open data, making data use and linked to policy, and also watch to see if this policy is implemented and what feedback they can get for data collection. So this review of mandate is really critical as one of the fundamental critical steps for building trust, to see whether you have in the NSS, you have those mandates, and those laws and regulations need to be revised to make room for that. The second thing is, along the data value chain, to look at the effectiveness. Many of those steps need to be improved in the new ecosystem, and you are more experts than I am on that. But the third element, and I stop here, Shri, is to really focus on transparency. I think in this day and age, and for trust and for serving the data value chain, we really much more than in the past 30, 40 years need to focus on making data accessible, open, communicate, and user engagement. So these three elements of looking at the mandate and legitimacy, looking at the effectiveness along data value chain, and also looking at the transparency, I think will bring a lot and bring back the NSS into being a service-oriented organization for building democracy in societies.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Let's go to Batava.
Thank you very much. To build and maintain trust in data and statistics, I think I could share some of the examples that we are doing in Mongolia. We have a strategy to promote and improve our communication with the data users and as well as the data producers within the country. And this strategy has, I could say, two pillars. One is oriented towards the data users. For this, we come up with the communication strategy. So basically, it's about being proactive, being visible, because we've seen during and after the COVID, there's been increasing questioning from the public about the accuracy of the official statistics. Especially, I could say, example of the inflation figures, because during the COVID and after the Russia-Ukraine situation and China's zero COVID policy, we experienced a significant increase in our CPI. And for example, we were releasing number with around like 12% increase in our CPI, but public were like questioning, maybe the statistics office is, serving the authorities, they're, artificially lowering the official statistics on behalf of the authorities, and then they were making inferences on behalf of, like, they take one vegetable, they say, look, this price of this vegetable has doubled within a year, but you released the inflation figure of just 12%. And we have to be proactive on this matter. So we come up with live event, introducing the methodology and trying to explain the public that CPI is not about just one product. It's about the basket of products. So we have to be very proactive in terms of if there's any question. Second is we have to make the use of data very easy. We have to make it very easy for users to access the data. So that's why starting from 2021, actually we completely renewed our statistical information portal. So we worked together with the professional agency to improve the UI UX of our website, and we introduced the smart search engine, which is very similar to what you have in Bloomberg terminal. So where you can find use keywords to find data easily. And second pillar of our strategy was to work with the different government organizations who does own and produce the data, because we've seen there's been a significant discrepancies and quality issues among these government data. So we decided to uh, start with the data integration project, and as Shada said, currently we are working to amend the statistical legislation with the focus on building up a data governance framework in the country. Because most of the case, when you see government agencies who produce data, most of the time they are not willing to share the data because they are afraid that there could be security issues, etc. So we think that if the good data governance framework is introduced in the country, then the data can be used in the data lifecycle, and quality can be improved. So these are the two main pillars that we are doing.
Those are the pillars that you're working on. How long did it take you to redo your website to
Actually,
the UX and UI? That's a lot of work.
It's been a long work. I mean, just for the designing of the UI UX, it took about almost 8 months, because we had to discuss with this agency again and again, and then we have to show the result to the users, whether they like it or not, whether it's easy or not. And then after that, the development stage begins. So overall, it took about like almost 2 years. So we just introduced it last November.
Okay, good. I think we should all take a look at your site. I know that all of us have had bosses who tell us, "Oh, we're going to get a new website," and they think it's 6 months, but it takes a long time to get it right. So I appreciate that very much. Yusuf, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. This is very important. I'm going to approach it in a different direction. And this is consistent with other professions. Basic, but very important. For example, when you go to a doctor, you want two things from a doctor. If you're very sick, you want a really competent doctor. The doctor should be able to demonstrate consistently that they have capacity to deal with that condition. And two, you want to feel it. Sometimes it's a feeling. You want to feel it that they have your best interests at heart, and they're going to be confidential about your issue. And we see that even with lawyers. You go to a very competent lawyer, consistently demonstrating capacity, but also have your interests at heart and confidential. So even in statistics, and we've seen that working in our situation, statistics offices, the overall national statistics system, they have to have capacity. The public, the users, the government, development partners, they have to trust that the statistics system, the statisticians, they have capacity, and they've consistently demonstrated that they have capacity to produce statistics. And I'm not going into the details of the different areas of capacity. Even being independent is a demonstration of capacity. Then users have to know, the general public should know, in the case of the CPI, inflation, in the case of poverty, in the case of the economy is growing, is not growing. The users should feel that whatever you're doing, you have the best interests of the users. And especially when you're collecting data, you'll ensure confidentiality and other ethical issues regards the data. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's so important. I once shared a primary care doctor with my wife. The terrible idea, he would break all my confidences to her. That was the problem. Okay, so let's go to a recording. We are joined by Madhub from Mauritius by a recording. So let's go to that, and then we'll go to Natalia.
This is nothing.
This is Natalia.
This is nothing.
Okay, this is Natalia. So can we go to? Sorry, Natalia. Hello. We'll come to you in just a minute. If we have the recording, do we have? Okay, Natalia, over to you. Opening thoughts, please, and greetings. Where are you?
Okay, thank you very much. I'm speaking from Buenos Aires, Argentina, so it's 5:30 a.m. for me.
Oh, wow.
Glad
Thank
to
you.
be able to join anyway. And happy to be in this panel. Thank you again for the invitation. So I'm the ED of the Open Data Charter. We are a global civil society organization that works promoting open data principles. Our main points of contact within government are actually the open data offices. And so we've been working alongside with organizations like Open Data Watch and Shada to bring together the communities of NSOs and open data offices. One of the things that I think it's worth saying right now is that, of course, data governance it's a complicated issue. I used to be a public official back in the day, and there's many actors that are involved and create data. So one of the most important aspects of data governance is actually understanding the full picture of who those stakeholders are and what role they play in it. So because there's a lot of data creators, data publishers, data collectors, and every ministry actually plays a goal when data governance framework it's not clear. There's actually we're missing public value that unlocking and publishing that data actually could bring in. To work around that, actually standardization of data is critical so that the data flow among the stakeholders it actually does work, and so we can work towards meeting the data demand that is being held from citizens, from civil society organizations, from the academia, from journalists that actually will use the data that we're all working very hard to open. Data interoperability is actually a way of helping with some of these challenges, but those platforms are usually led by digital teams, which are not within the open data teams nor the NSO teams. So getting all those actors together is very important. And that's why I'm always saying that people interoperability alongside data interoperability, it's important. We need to get every actor in the conversation so that we get the interoperability of data right. It is important to have a shared understanding of what an open data policy is and what it entails, so that within government it's not just a public official doing one more thing along with everything that he or she has to do. So they have to, aside from everything, also open up data. Opening up data is not easy, it's not cheap, and we need to make sure that this public value, as I've been saying, it's met. Those are my first views, and once again, thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. So let me just ask you, I like that concept of people interoperability before we have, machines interoperability. Have you been able to succeed in that in Buenos Aires? Maybe we'll come back to her. We'll come back to her on that. So we actually want to do a Slido and get your opinions on this. We want you to participate. So we're just going to do the Slido first, and then we'll have a chance to come back as well. So we have a couple of questions for all of you. You all know, go to slido.com or use your phone. We're going to pull up the Slido on the screen. And when we do that, you can use your QR code and answer the question. So we have two questions for you, and we're going to see some live results. There it is. Slido, you can see the number or use the QR code. So we'll give everybody a chance to pull up the QR code and get that, please. We want as many of you to participate as possible, and then we'll revisit the answers at the end. So I think give it another 10 seconds, and then we will go to the question. So the poll question is, drum roll. Okay, we already started answering it. Okay, let's see here. This is the earlier one. We're going to go to, 1 second. We're going to go to TA3. Yeah, question 1, TA3, question 1. Here we go. How would you define and measure successful implementation of data stewardship? So this is a great question. You have 4 options, so I would love all of you to participate. Increased resources allocated to the production, dissemination, and use of data. Increased data sharing and reuse across the data ecosystem. Increased trust in data. And then low incidence or impact of data privacy. Wow, 100% so far. Okay, now it's changing. Live, I see that. That's nice. So we still have increased resources. I'm going to ask you folks for a quick reaction to what you see as well here. Increased data sharing. I feel like there's a horse race. Who's going to win? Okay, so I think we have a general sense. We have about 45 people participating, which is nice. Let's see. Yusuf, any thoughts as you look at the answers there?
I think the answers are balanced a little bit, but you see increased resources stands out, which is a major factor for capacity for national statistics systems to manage the whole ecosystem, to support the ecosystem. So I think the responses meet my expectations.
Okay, we're very close. 32-27. It was, but it's really about increased data sharing and reuse. What do you think, Batawa, about those numbers?
Yeah, I think it's very important, like for increasing the data sharing. But for us, we did a gap assessment about data sharing and data quality among the government institutions, and the one thing we found was it's before data sharing, it's very important to have a good framework in place. Either it could be in the legislation or it could be in the regulations. So I think before that, we need to have a good framework. That's really important.
Very good. We have 100 people voting. That's very good. So Shaida, your thoughts on what you see? 100
Well,
plus.
This is very much also, it must be the same group as this morning. No surprise. Because number 1 also came out with open data and data release and data transparency. And I think the whole crowd sees that this is really an element that breaks this vicious cycle that in many countries are stuck in not having enough data, not having enough resources. So you really need to show your value first through open data, through transparency, to be able to turn this into a virtuous cycle.
Okay.
So I'm not surprised.
Yeah, and we need all of these actually anyway.
Yeah.
So I think we're ready to go to the next question. So we can. What is data steward for you in 3 words? What is data stewardship for you in 3 words? So this will take a little bit of time for the cloud to. Okay, the robots are answering the first question. You can see that.
A nice robot.
Yeah. The algorithm is here, the AI. All right, leadership. I like that. That's good. Let's go, folks. 3 words. Any 3 words you like. Now managing data well. Governance, coherence, leadership, engagement. Again, we'd like. Now you guys are having just some fun, right?
Yeah.
Yusuf, your thoughts as this is coming up, and maybe you give me. What would you be your words from this word list you're seeing?
Yeah, leadership and partnerships.
Leadership, partnership. Batawa, your 3 words?
I would say governance, trust, and partnership.
That's one word. For me, ready. I think the data steward should be a change manager.
Change management, change manager. That's good. Trust. I see trust is also important. Let's see, Natalia. Do you have a thought, Natalia, that you'd like to jump in here with as you see this on your screen, Natalia? Even if you can hear her audio, that would be great. But anyway, we'll keep voting on there. We have, again, 90 people voting. That's very good.
Hi, sorry, I was muted and couldn't control my mic. So one of the things that I think it's key to data stewardship is trust. Governmental structures are huge, and building trust among, as I said, different ministries and different offices it's super important. But also trust with the data reusers, because if we are all working towards opening up data and then nobody actually reuses that data, we're missing a really big bit of the data cycle, if you will.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We're now going to go to a video, which will give us a sense from Mauritius, the perspective there. Madhub is from the Data Protection Commission, is the Commissioner of Data Protection for Mauritius. So we're going to show the video and play that now.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, dear participants. I'm very honored and privileged to have been invited to form part of this important panel in the UN Forum, and which also China is hosting. Actually, I've been asked to state what is the role of the Data Protection Office in Mauritius, and as a commissioner, what I have been doing to promote data protection compliance in Mauritius. First of all, my office has been involved in a number of enforcement and compliance activities since the creation of the office 15 years ago. The first Data Protection Act was enacted in 2004, but came into force in February 2009. I was appointed in 2007 to create the Data Protection Office and to promulgate the law, which was not enforced up to 2009. And one of my essential functions, being a barrister, was really to see how to make an effective law to be able to comply with local and international requirements. And when I started the office, one of my main missions was registration of controllers and processes in Mauritius, investigation of complaints, which is a very legalistic procedure here because all the offenses under the Data Protection Act are criminal offenses and have to be prosecuted before the intermediate court in Mauritius. But the procedure is that I have to give, after inquiry completed by my office, a decision as to whether I should recommend prosecution. And once I do this, if the aggrieved party feels aggrieved actually by the decision to recommend prosecution, they actually go and appeal to the ICT Appeal Tribunal, and still not satisfied, they can also go to the Supreme Court. This has been a very enriching experience where quasi-judgments are being given, jurisprudence created by my office on data protection, which is a unique feature in data protection as such. And for the region as well has been an inspiration as to how to interpret data protection principles in the various laws across the region, because all the principles resemble. And I must say, I was given a very difficult task to be able to really, create jurisprudence in this particular sector. But we have been quite successful in doing that, because many of our decisions that were appealed to, I must say 99% of these decisions, these cases, we have won, even at the level of the Supreme Court, giving me reason as to my decision whether to recommend prosecution. We also do certifications. We are a certifying body. That is, we certify organizations in Mauritius, both public and private, as to being, data protection compliant. This process of certification is a bulky one, and we do a lot of assessments with the organization concerned before we come to the conclusion that they are actually being, legitimate to be certified or not. And many other activities involve, notification of data breach to our office, data protection impact assessments, authorizations in certain cases for transfers abroad, not in all cases. Then also we have regular interventions that are made by myself on TV, media, local and international, like this one, where I actually contribute to sensitization and awareness. I'm also a respected member of many networks where I regularly speak And I think all these activities together form part of the essential picture of what we do at the level of the office. But we are also, an advisory body. We give legal opinions on data protection. We issue guides on each thematic of concern to sectors in Mauritius on data protection. So we have around 19 guides, which are very, very interesting in the sense that they offer a legal perspective together with a practical perspective of data protection. I think many of the data protection authorities in the world also issue guides, and I have been given very nice feedback about the guides that we have issued. And to look at what Mauritius, the Data Protection Office has done for Mauritius as a whole in terms of international compliance. We have ratified the Malabo Convention, the African Cybersecurity and Data Protection, in 2018. We have also ratified Convention 108 in 2016 as the first African state to have done so. We have further ratified the Convention 108 Plus of Council of Europe in September 2020, being the first non-European state to have ratified this convention. We are also have ratified the Budapest Convention a very long time ago. And very recently, in 2021, we enacted the Cybercrime Act in Mauritius, which shows the international commitment to the Budapest Convention. I'm also a respected member of the National Cybersecurity Committee, which is an advisory body on cybercrime and data protection, where we develop policies and frameworks to be able to promote cyber resilience, data protection, and other IT-related guidance that we give. So a very important initiative at the level of the country. Also the EU Adequacy Project that Mauritius has embarked upon. My office has submitted a report to the EU Directorate for Data Protection so that they can assess the level of compliance in data protection and Mauritius be recognized as a safe country in data protection. And we also submit every year an annual report on all our activities that we do at this office to the National Assembly, to Parliament. And we develop all the statistics that we have throughout the year that we have inquired, all the investigations, very important aspects of these investigations, the recommendations that are to be followed with respect to the activities that have been conducted by this office. And I know that the Ministry of Public Service here, the civil service, have also a data governance framework because we were also solicited to give our advice on this since 2016. And this framework is still viable, it's still alive and very importantly used in public sector, where you have the different roles, of data steward, user, custodian, controller, all these data governance drivers, where all their important functions are explained in that data governance framework, together with very important data protection principles like accountability, security, quality assurance, and many other important rights, data access rights of data subjects. And what it says, this document, is that it is to be in complete conformity with the Data Protection Act. So the data governance framework is very much in conformity with our law. And we are very appreciative of this because the public sector shows commitment towards compliance with data protection. And there is another important framework, data sharing and data architecture framework in Mauritius, which have been developed by the Ministry of Information and Technology. And this document, this framework as well, provides for respect to data privacy rights and the Data Protection Act. So I think all these initiatives, to say in a nutshell, because being wary of the constraints of time, basically this is what we do. They show a lot of commitment There's a lot to be done. There are more improvement, more innovation that are being brought in our services. For example, very recently, we have developed what we call the eDPO at my office, that is fully computerized system with all services online to give a good and efficient service to the public. I will stop here, and I'm very honored again to have participated in this panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shaida. Thank you to our guest from Mauritius. And now we'll go to Shaida with a question. We are going to ask you about the current challenges to watch out for building trust in data and reduce chances of misuse, and for maintaining balance between producing timely, accurate data and protecting privacy and confidentiality, please.
Thanks for that simple question. I think most of us, when we think of the challenges, we think of the challenges that the digital transformation is bringing us with security breaches and privacy invasions, and with the AI and with algorithm biases and so on. But I won't go through that. I think we have people who know those areas much better than I do. Let me just focus and stay in the space of the national statistical system. And I'll give you very quickly 3 challenges. One of them is really the concept, what we're trying to do to meet the leave no one behind agenda, and trying to produce much more disaggregated data and much more micro data to be able to capture the experiences of different individuals that we have missed in the past. And also for analysis around this topic in the intersectionality, where you try to look at the groups that actually have multiple or more than multiple characteristics that you want to understand their experiences and their challenges. And that could be that could be sort of it's a beautiful initiative, but you could also have dark sides that you have to manage through governance and through better safeguards for saving privacy, but also not letting that data sit there, to use it and to make really good policy decisions. So that's one group of activity, and I don't know if everybody agrees with me, but I think disaggregation and leave no one behind is something that we really need to be careful as we implement. The second thing is that we all, for good reasons, are doing a mad rush to alternative data sources. And this is really great. We're using the citizen-generated data, many other sources, but we should be, again, have safeguards for, and we have covered it in this World Data Forum. We have safeguards for quality, for sustainability, and also for mainstreaming it. So it's not a one-off and one-time exercise. Finally, the third challenge and risk that I think is really important for us to look at, and I observe it every day. We have a lot of solutions. We have a lot of tried and proven solution in front of us for how to improve data literacy, how to improve geospatial integration with regular data, and these are all an open data, and this all add up to really improve the data ecosystem and add to trust. But countries, many of us don't have the time and the resources to implement some of these tried and proven methods. So that could be a waste, but also could be adding to a source of mistrust. So overall, I think as we modernize a statistical system, we should really keep an eye on this dark side, I call it, the dark side of modernization, and try to see how we can, through governance and through safeguards and through partnership, working together, overcome them. And in all those things, in the safeguard tree, this balancing act should be really prominent and should really be a priority. Balancing act means that when you open the data, you should also safeguard for privacy. When you collect much more disaggregated data, you watch out for how is it stored, how is anonymized. So you always do this balancing act in moving forward.
But that's very hard to do, the balancing act, right? It's important, but hard to do. Any tips for somebody who's been trying to do it and not able to do it?
Well, then start somewhere. And for example, on the balancing act for making your data open and accessible, we heard this morning from Jean Holmes on what they did at the data.gov. And we have many countries in this room that, when a few years ago, when we started advocating for open data, they really didn't know how to go about it. But if you look at it, there's lots of progress has been made in last 7 years of how to, have access to information policies, how to identify users, how to identify the databases that are legitimately, they can be open and linked to other databases. So there's a lot of solutions there that countries can follow.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Let's go to Natalia, bring her in from Buenos Aires. We have a question specifically for you. We wanted to hear from you about the the way in which you're thinking about all your aspects of your work, and this is important for institutions inside of the government to participate in the creation and implementation of data governance and data policies. But what needs to be done? What priorities are needed to advance the open data agenda? So Natalia is going to join us. We can hear you, so you can start speaking, please.
Me okay?
Yes.
Hi. Sorry, I was waiting for the hosts to unmute me. So once again, thank you for the question. One of the main challenges that we're seeing from the Open Data Charter is that there is a lot of requests coming from kind of the UN agreements, thematic agreements, where we see that there's actually locked public value in those reports, because the reports are being done and are being sent on time to the UN system, but that data is not being open. And that actually shows what I was talking about, that different governmental offices are not necessarily being as collaborative as we would think. So once again, bringing all those organizations together in order to have a consistent open data policy, it's very important. One of the challenges that we've seen throughout the years is also that opening up data entails not only a technical challenge, but also it means a cultural change within government. It's not been that long since we started talking about open data, if we compare it to kind of the coming up of modern states. So we need to keep this conversation going and bring this conversation to every forum that we can. Another trend in the open data policies that I think could be helpful to move forward with data governance and actually data reuse is we're seeing a double click on thematic agendas. So talking about open data on climate change, talking about open data in gender, it's actually helping out bringing these communities and also bringing these communities together, bringing more actors towards the conversations, because there's certain organizations that might not be might not understand themselves as data organizations. They work on climate change, but they don't work with data. So if we call everybody in as far as understanding data demand from a thematic perspective, we might be opening up the door to new organizations, new researchers, new journalists that might use that data but didn't know that the data was actually up in a portal. So the thematic conversations, the thematic deepening of conversations that we are seeing is actually making the data community grow and have deeper conversations around specific themes. And I think that's a really great path that we are seeing right now.
Natalia, before I let you go right there's a question that is coming from the chat. Is there an online community working on data governance that you are familiar with that you can talk about? So an online community working on data governance that you can.
So there's a whole lot of people and organizations working on data governance and open data. There's gonna be a huge event where we can follow up this conversation, the Data Festival that is going to take place in Uruguay later this year. Fortunately, there's a lot of civil society organizations and other governmental institutions that will also participate there. just using the hashtag open data, you will find there's a huge open data community around the world. I come from Latin America. This is going to be the 10th year that there's a regional open data conference in Latin America, where civil society actually leads one of the days, which is organized as an unconference. So it's an organized event. So there's a huge community that you can tap on, and the Open Data Charter is there to help. So just reach out to us.
And the Data Festival, there's one in Munich in June. And is that the one you were talking about? Data-Festival?
No, it's the one in Uruguay.
Okay, so there's one in Uruguay.
Yeah.
So if you can't wait till November, you can go to the one in June in Munich. So obviously a lot. Folks, keep sending in your questions via Huva. We want to hear from you. Please keep sharing your thoughts at UN Data Forum on the hashtag, as well as the handle. We will continue to look at your questions and bring them to you. I'm now going to go to a question for Yusuf. What are some of the recent trends that you find threaten building trust for official statistics? How do you address these? And what are some ways to maintain the momentum to keep innovating in filling in data gaps with new resources and new sources of data while watching the increasing data use and trust? So examples from Rwanda and anywhere else that you know would be very welcome, Yusuf.
Yeah, thank you very much. This is a very good question. First of all, we see that demand for statistics is increasing. And on the other side of it, the statistics community is struggling to keep up with the pace. Now, that creates a gap that is filled by alternative facts.
Alternative facts.
It creates a gap that is filled by alternative facts, and that's a very big challenge. So I think to address that, we need to scale up our capacity to produce statistics to try to meet the demand as much as we can, because sometimes we don't have guarantees and they create doubt. Alternative facts create doubt in credible sources of statistics. So even when you have the statistics, there'll be hesitancy in trusting those statistics. Two, we are seeing gaps in communication. Producing statistics and communicating them well requires significant capacity, especially from statisticians, to understand the depth of the concepts that they are explaining. We see many times when we disseminate statistics, we get so many questions. Sometimes the questions go deeper than the numbers that we see at face value. So that capacity to explain those numbers and what they mean in the sectoral sense is very important, and we see gaps in that ability. And when we don't have that capacity to explain beyond what we see from the face value of the numbers, we create doubt in the people we give the numbers to. So that's also very important. Three is there are issues with users, especially their ability to appreciate the statistics and differentiate between good quality statistics and not so good quality statistics. And that's also a big task from the statisticians to build capacity on the user side so that the users can appreciate good statistics. Without that, they have a lot of doubts, even when they don't need to have doubts. And finally, there is always this question of opening up and opening up especially the details, microdata, and so on and so forth. There is one dimension that is real, that we've lived through, the confidence to be sure that you're going to open up and it will be okay. And that comes from a capacity side. You're not sure you did the job well. You think that when you open up, actually people will find mistakes and it will be a problem. And we've opened up some data sets, and believe me, the challenge is big. The challenge is very big because users come in, they try to run the numbers. Sometimes they run the numbers differently, not necessarily the way you run the numbers. When they get something different, it's a challenge. You have to come back and explain, even if there is no mistake in those numbers. Now, if there is a mistake, it's even worse. So cleaning up and making sure you reverse it, you say this is the only mistake, there's no any other mistake, and we've not been doing mistakes in other statistics, it's a big challenge. So, and all these are mainly capacity issues. So we have to be addressing the capacity issues so that we build more trust in statistics.
Thank you.
And regarding what we need to do regarding providing more statistics, especially from non-traditional sources, I think as statisticians, we have to start putting in place a pipeline of experimental statistics and clearly explaining them and the limitations and having a path through which they'll graduate to official statistics. We are not yet doing that. And I'm sure when we do that, we'll cover a lot and provide some insights into numbers that we are not able to produce yet, but still mitigate the issues of trust, especially before they graduate to official statistics. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Yusuf. One of the things that people may not know is that you've been the Director General of the office, the Statistics Office, for 17 years. What is one thing that you have, I know you've learned a lot, but what's one thing that you have learned in, like when you started, you wish you knew then what you know now? What's one thing?
By the way, it's 15 years, not 17
Okay,
years.
15 years.
But I'll not go into what I didn't know that I wish I knew. I'll go to what I knew that I'm lucky I knew from the beginning. One wise person told me, if you're going to be in this position for 1 year, then fix some numbers. You can fix numbers, cook some numbers. 2 years, you can cook numbers. But if you're going to do 3, 5 years, 10 years, they'll catch up with you. They'll catch up with you. And looking back, I think I'm very lucky. Nothing has caught up with me.
Well, that's
Thank you
because
very
you were not fixing the numbers, so that's great. Let's go to Batava. We have a question for you. As you know, he's the chairman of NSO Mongolia. What are the approaches taken by your office in order to ensure that data are open and accessible in order to achieve maximum impact? You, of course, talked about the UI and the UX changes, but something maybe deeper and more important. It's not the technology, I know.
Yes, I think it's similar to other statistical organizations. We do publish all the microdata and the metadata of all the censuses and surveys online, which is accessible to public. And also, once we receive some microdata from other institutions, we try to link it together with our existing censuses and anonymize it and then try to release it online. But here I wanted to share our experience with the Open Data Act, which was passed by the Parliament last year. So before this act was passed, almost over 80% of the data held by the government institutions were classified as confidential by those organizations. But this act stipulated what's classified data, what is not. And then based on that, together with the Ministry of Digital Development and Transformation, we created a working group to establish an open data catalog of the government. So I think it was really helpful for the public to see and also the academia to see what kind of data is being held by the government. And based on that, we've seen that there's an increasing demand from at least from the researchers. We see a lot of letters coming from the universities that requesting data sets from NSOs or other organizations in which we have to provide. And also because of this increasing, demand from these people, government organizations started to come to NSOs because before they were not, focusing on the building of quality data, right? Now, because of the law, they have to have a good data set available for the public. So I think it's a good catalyst for the country to have, data accessible and open to the public, and as well as it's a good start. It has become a good starting point for us to do a data integration nationwide. So that's all I wanted to share.
Thank you very much. All right, we want to get your audience folks involved in this with us, and we have our volunteers. We're going to have the microphones, and we have a question already. Folks, please get ready. Raise your hands. We want to get as many questions in here. We have a great panel, of course. Volunteers, please find the folks raising their hands. There's a hand there. Please go there. Tell us who you are and your question, please, and where you're from, too.
Thank you very much. My name is Alexandre Barbosa from CETIC.br at the Brazilian Network Information Center. Well, I'm very happy to hear this debate because when I hear you experts and bright minds saying trust, data, governance, ethics, data sharing, and all this that has been discussed, I believe that we're discussing about the future of the statistical data production and statistical community. We have to face all these aspects of the process. And in this statistical community, we have been hearing for many years that we should use, there is an urgent need to use alternative data sources and also data sharing. But it seems to me that we are facing a paradox because we acknowledge the stakeholders that we need to share data. But in practice, the reality is different. We can see that within government, within ministries and NSOs, between government and private sector that holds a large amount of data. So the question is, what is missing? Is it a legal framework missing or data interoperability framework missing, a trusted data platform? So the question is why we acknowledge the need of sharing data, but we do not advance in this debate. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalia. There's a question from our Latin American friend, so we'll keep it within Latin America first. Do you hear the question, Natalia, about the how do you make sure that you have the sharing of the data? Sorry, we're just going to unmute her. Sorry, 1 second. We're going to unmute you. Not yet?
Now?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for that. So it's a great question, and it's something that that we've been working for a long time now. I think it depends on the context. Of course, there's certain countries where they won't be able to publish data, governmental data, if the legal framework is not put in place. There are certain countries where you get the open data policy going, and then you build up the regulation, learning from the lessons of those early stages of publication. I do think we've been discussing for a long time, and one of the recommendations that I could give is try to understand what has been done already. Like I'm glad to hear that there's an open data policy that has been published by one of the countries in the panel that gives a framework and has pushed the open data agenda there. So I think context matters, and understanding what regulations need to be put in place for governmental institutions to feel secure while opening up data. It's important. As I said, I think open data policies are not only a technical challenge. I think that the technical challenge can be met. The cultural change is the biggest challenge of open data policies. And one other thing that I would recommend, it's also having one core open data portal, because from our experience, people, journalists, civil society organizations go into the open data portal to find certain types of data, but they find everything that has been published there and actually fully understand what is being published by government. As far as data reuse, the open data community has been promoting data reuse for a long time. We've had a zillion hackathons, data innovation challenges, and events that promote data reuse. I do think that mirroring those events and those data reuse promotion policies is very important. And there's already lessons being learned from that. So let's not reinvent the wheel. And then as far as collaborations between private sector generated data and governmental data, I do believe that that we are still missing legal frameworks to allow that, and I understand that we need to move that conversation faster.
Okay, before we go to another question from the audience, please raise your hand if you have a question. Our volunteers will come to you. Saida, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, great points by Natty. I've lost my voice, sorry. But I just wanted to add that one of the things that's missing, that's a great question, that the trust is the future of the official statistics. And one of the things we're missing is really this leadership role of data stewardship in many countries. And this is something that, you know, you've seen the Slido questions about it, and many people think that's really important role. But and there's a working group now within the UN, reporting to the UN Statistical Commission, working on data stewardship. And one of the things we are finding, and it's a very important working group, by the way, because these issues have to be solved by countries around the table. So you have to have an intergovernmental structure. But, you know, kudos to UN for bringing civil societies like myself into the table for discussions around what should be the future of data stewardship. And data stewardship is really at the heart of what we're talking about in improving trust, because it's a role that basically clarifies the goal and actions that needs to be taken at the country level for building trust and in use of data and statistics. In fact, we're sending out a survey to a questionnaire to all the countries. Soon it should be disseminated. And one of the elements of this survey is we want to find out from the countries, what is the scorecard for how do you judge yourself if you want to rate yourself on how you're doing on data stewardship along the data value chain. What are some of those things that should be on your scorecard? Is it increasing resources? Is it more data sharing? Coming up with data sharing agreements? Is it going to have low incidence of privacy breaches? Is it increasing citizen engagement, or more requests from the policymakers, or more interactions with users and journalists? So really, this is a field that is growing, and we're trying to understand much more. And I think this is one of the future elements that we should all invest in to understand data stewardship and try to make it work in different contexts and different countries.
So this questionnaire you're sending out to 200 countries, it's going to go out when? And when do we expect to hear back? And do you send it in an email? How does it work?
Ian is here, and Francesca knows more than I do. She's probably going out in the next month or so. And right, Francesca, shake your head if it's true, or give her the microphone to speak about it. And we hope to have results in the next 6 months or so.
Okay, so in 6 months or so, we'll definitely hear about that. Folks, raise your hands if you have a question. We have microphones. Yeah, they're going to come here. Meanwhile, there's a question from online directly to Yusuf. How do we validate the sources of these alternative facts? You had talked about that. Can we integrate these facts into statistical reporting? Is the timeless and big data the main concerns? Timeliness and
in fact, we have a policy. We have a policy in Rwanda, because we know we can't produce everything that people need. Some partners collaborate with us in areas that they want to do research where we don't do research. And in the collaboration, we look at their methodologies, we look at their competencies, we look at the extent of resources they're investing in that kind of work. And many times we are happy. We are happy with the quality of work, and we stamp approvals for the quality. And we establish relationships with those stakeholders. And we say those statistics are as good as the statistics that we produce. But some that we don't know how they do the statistics, it's very difficult to approve that.
I think that's absolutely right. We have a question here. Hello.
Hello, I just wanted to, my name is Charles Lebon Berikimpolo. So I live in Rwanda, Kigali, with Yusuf, but I'm from the Republic of Congo. I work at EMS. So I just wanted the Director General to elaborate more about the increase with demand. Where is it coming from? Is it, because I think official statistics should remain official statistics. You also mentioned alternative facts. What are the sources of those alternative facts? And do you see an opportunity to collaborate or partner with those kind of institutions that are producing those facts, so that you continue to give that trust that official statistics should always be official statistics? So, and then the capacity, do you have any specific area that you see you need to build capacity? If they are the top 3, what are those areas that you believe? I know that in Rwanda, we already have a data science campus. It's quite a beautiful building. What other area do you think will be your top priority in terms of building the capacity for you to respond to the demand? Thank you.
Thank you. And Yusuf, will have you answer that. But Batawa, I'd like to hear the point of view from Mongolia on similar track. So Yusuf, you first, please.
Increasing demand is natural from what we are seeing. For example, just from moving from MDGs to SDGs, a lot of demand for statistics was created. Countries were already struggling with MDGs, and those were few indicators. And with SDGs, almost tripled, quadrupled. And meeting that demand became a challenge. And from the assessments that we see, I remember like just before COVID, the African Union did an assessment of Africa's capacity to meet the SDGs, and the average was 40%. Now, if the average is 40%, then you should expect maybe there are some that are 10%, 15%. So it's a very big challenge. Regarding the source of alternative facts, I already touched on that a little bit. Some facts that are alternative are actually good, but some that we don't know how those things are done and everything, we can't tell, because this is a free world. Anyone can do any research and publish research. Regarding capacity building, in all areas of statistics that we do, we still need to build capacity. Understanding the concepts, understanding the technologies, communicating, corporate governance of these issues, the legal frameworks to make sure these things happen properly. So it's a continuous process. We can't say that we already have enough capacity in this and we need only capacity in this thing. So it's a continuous process in almost everything. Thank you very much.
Thank you. View from Mongolia, please.
Yeah, before answering this question, I want to add something on the previous question. One of the reasons we found there's no enough data sharing was about capacity and limited resources, because previously our perception was the government agencies, they didn't want to share the data. But what we found out after meeting and discussing with government agencies was those agencies, they didn't have just not enough personnel working on the data, not enough resources to extract the data from the database, etc. So I think we shouldn't be missing this point of the capacity building among these institutions holding data, not only the government sector, but also the private sector. Because we were also talking with one of the mobile operators in Mongolia, and then they were saying that they are ready to provide the data, but what they're missing is they don't have just enough staff working under them. And with regard to the capacity building and increased demand of data, as Yusuf said, we still have to work to train our staff on the official statistics and official statistics cannot meet all these demands. So that's why I think it's really important to establish a good data governance within the nation and try to focus more on establishing and building the capacity among those institutions responsible for the data. That's really important. NSO cannot take everything.
Thank you. Any questions from the audience? Yeah, here we have, so a microphone, please.
Thank you very much for all your presentation. It was really great and inspiring session. And my name is Prim. I am a youth representative, and I would like to get some youth voices and youth will on how we can build trust and we can have ethics in data. If we can have meaningful and inclusive engagement with youth to build trust and to ensure the quality of data, to have like a consistency or timeliness, like having the up-to-date data, having the data that is not outdated so we can make informed decision at the right time, and using innovation, technology, AI, that can we have accelerated impact in data reuse in open source. And how, when you say that build trust is by building capacity, in what types of capacity would you like to build, and how can we actually use innovation, more youth engagement, more engagement with people, actions, and empowerment, and enabling legal framework to have build capacity on the people, as well as in terms of open data. If we can open the data, there are more people that we can take actions on it, and then we can also help you on the action that we take, because this is a data about us, and we also would like to know about our data together to work towards a sustainable future for all. Thank you.
Thank you. Our youth ambassador, everyone, let's give her a hand. Okay, we're almost at the end of this conversation. We have lots of things we want to hear from our panel, but we're going to start to wrap up. I'm going to give each of our panelists a chance to give us their final thoughts, but I'm going to share a couple of questions that have come in, and then you can weave in that. One of the questions was about celebrities and influencers. And we are seeing that some celebrities and some influencers have more influence than official numbers. And that they can be trusted even if they have false numbers, false figures. So I would love to hear your thought on that. And, you know, we have a room full of people who are doing this on a daily basis. From your experience, you've all done it for so long. When you are down or feeling overwhelmed in your work, how do you have the capacity to overcome that? Because it can be very difficult for many of us who are dealing with data, too much data, incorrect data, all of that. So I'd love to hear that as well. We're going to go first to Natalie so she can give us her thoughts, and then we will go around the panel, and then we will wrap up. And we will look at the Slido and give you a chance to look at the final numbers as well. So Natty, over to you.
Can you hear me now?
We're just going to come to you in a second. She's very patient at 6 in the morning or something. Yes, go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So thanks once again for the invite and for the question. I do want to leave just a few thoughts, bringing back this idea of people interoperability is really, really important to get all the stakeholders in the table when we're thinking about an open data policy. Building up on what the youth ambassador actually said, we need to understand that within an open data policy, data literacy is a key critical aspect of it, not only to develop data literacy within government, but also to help civil society organizations and citizens understand the data that we are publishing. As far as when you're feeling down and working on this, I know it can get frustration around, but whenever we're working on innovative ways, and once again in cultural changes, it actually takes time. So we need to walk the walk, and that's where I think collaboration is critical. All the NSOs, all the data civil servants that are working within the different ministries, civil society organizations, academia, we can all add value to this conversation and the data governance conversation. So let's bring everybody together. And I'm glad that UN Stats is actually now moving towards that. And as Shada said, helping get this global conversation moving forward so we can build great data governance frameworks.
Excellent. That's Natalia Carfi of Open Data Charter in Buenos Aires, Argentina. Yusuf, over to you.
The first thing I want to conclude on is outdated data. There's a big disconnect between outdated data and the reality on the ground. And that alone creates a lot of mistrust. So as a statistics community, we have to try to scale up the pace to produce statistics that are timely, that connect with reality. Then regarding how do we keep energized? You have to have the passion. Otherwise, you won't make it. Thank you very much.
All right, folks, let's thank Yusuf Murangwa, who is the Director General of the National Institute of Statistics of Rwanda. Thank you very much. Okay, Batap, over to you.
Okay, so I just want to, say something about this social media influencers questioning the quality of the data that we produce at the National Statistics Office. So our approach is to directly answer to their challenges. So every time there's like on Facebook or Twitter, someone questions the data, we try to answer this as soon as possible and invite them to our office to explain it. And I think it worked quite successfully. And yeah, that's I think could be an easy and simple solution for this. And to building a trust in the data, I think it's what we think is the good data governance framework is the most important thing, because we have this Open Data Act and the Data Privacy Act. Every time the private data is being used, we notify the citizens. So it's to show them that the data is being used in an ethical way, in a professional manner. And another thing is,
so you just bring them into the office and you show it to them. They must be surprised when that happens.
Yeah. So that's all. I think it's a good governance framework has to be built within the country.
Yeah. Okay, and how do you deal with the, when you're tired and frustrated? What do you do?
Well, you're a government official, right? You cannot show it.
Sorry, I missed it. Can you say it again?
I mean, even you are tired, you are a public servant, right? So you have to serve the people. You are holding the government position. So you have to answer all the questions they have.
Okay, thank you very much. That's Batava Deshmukh, who is the chairman of the NSO of Mongolia. And Shaita, over to you.
Well, we heard that, and everybody agrees that trust is going to be a really important focus for the future of official statistics. And we think that, I particularly think that the role of the data stewards for the future is going to be critical. So I hope in 5 years or so, we see more countries, more organizations that have data stewards. We don't have, when we talk to each other, we don't have to define it. We know the scorecard, we know what the benefits of it are. And we also encourage the youth or young people to really feel themselves empowered to study these complex areas of data stewardship. We rely on you, and we really want to encourage you to come in and feel like you're empowered and you have data agency to take care of the future of data. In terms of what I do when I'm depressed, this hardly ever happens because I'm an incurably happy person. But I take a long-term view. I have a cabinet in my office which I open and I see all the things that 50 years ago we had. Publications and input-output tables of countries that we worked on, and I see sort of the huge improvements that we've had. So taking this long-term view is really nurtures you, but you always work for improving what's next thing, but keep a long-term view. We're solving very difficult problems of the world, and we need to keep that long-term view.
Wonderful. Keeping the long-term view. Let's thank Saida Bagi for that. She is the co-founder and managing director of
Thank
Open Data Watch. All right, before we go, we're just going to look one more time at the Slido. Let's see, and they'll give you a chance to vote again. I know some of the numbers may have changed, so we're excited to see that. And remember, we have one more day tomorrow. We want to make sure you are looking at the program for tomorrow. What are some of the opportunities and what are the events you'll be going to? Lots of great sessions tomorrow. So here is, we're going to go, how would you define and measure successful implementation of data stewardship? Increased data sharing and reuse across the data ecosystem is what was number one, as we can see there. And I don't think this means, Yusuf, for example, increased citizenship engagement is not important. It's just that there's so many other things, right? Would you say that?
I think it also depends on the people voting. As a statistician, if you would go out of this setting, maybe that would come first. So everything is valid there. Yeah.
Okay, very good. Let's go to the final slide. Okay, what do you see, Batawa? What do you see here? What do you respond to?
I think it's what we expect, right? The governance, partnership, and trust.
Those are good words, right?
Yeah.
Governance, partnership, and trust. You folks have that. Saida, I'll leave the last word to you.
Oh, I still stick to change management.
Change management. I'm sorry that nobody put that there, but she gets a vote for change management. And with that, we're done for day 2 of the UN Data Forum. Thank you very much, everybody, for being with us. And we'll see you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.